Welcome to TYT Sports, everybody. I'm Ben Mankewicz, Francis Maxwell here with me. As the sports world has become more aware of the dangers posed by concussions, with the NFL trailing the way, we've started to learn and understand more so. NFL players who suffer a concussion and want to get back on the field are understandable. What perhaps has been missed often in this story is the number of student athletes, the young number of people even in middle school and high school and college athletes who are never going to play professionally, but are in sports where they run significant risk of concussion. And frequently, the problem with concussions is that you don't know exactly when you've had one because symptoms don't show up right away. And there is always an instinct, the same instinct that we see from players in the NFL and Major League Baseball when they get a concussion, to think, I'm fine, I got to get back out there and play. My team wants me to, my coaches want me to, my family wants me to, and I want to. And of course, the worst thing that a player with a concussion can do is go back out and play and run the risk of another blow to the head while you have the concussion. Thankfully, there are some incredibly smart guys who are trying to correct that problem. They are the inventors of the Jolt Sensor, and one of them joins us now, Ben Harvatine. Ben, welcome. Thanks for talking to us. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You are a current student at MIT, or you're finished up there?
I graduated 2 years ago.
Congratulations. I hear that's a good school. I didn't consider it. They recruited me, but I wasn't interested. I had other goals. I went to Tufts, Ben, which is near MIT.
Yep.
So, Ben, you were a wrestler and you got a concussion. And that sort of begins this Jolt Sensor story. So quickly, tell people your story and then what led you to creating the Jolt Sensor.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was my junior year at MIT. I was at a wrestling practice. It was a preseason practice. And I'd been feeling dizzy for most of practice. As wrestling, you don't know if you're dizzy because you're getting hit in the head or because you're cutting weight or because the practice room is boiling hot. So I just kept pushing through it, the way I always had. I didn't really realize that something truly was wrong until I got some additional hits to my head. And I was at the point where I couldn't really stand upright. I was having trouble stringing sentences together, and ended up with a long hospital stint and then a pretty long, painful recovery after that, where I had to drop out of classes, and it was rough. And that was what led me to start trying to work on something like this, because I felt like the initial impacts I had had at practice had sort of been the start of the injury, and if I had come out of practice then, if I had a way to know that I needed to come out then, I don't think the injury would have been quite as severe, and I think my recovery would have been very different.
The Jolt Sensor literally is something that will make you aware that you have a significant problem. So you and your partner began a process where you came up with this product. What does the Jolt Sensor do?
So it is that it just gives you an objective quantification of the number of hits that you've had and the severity of those impacts. And in the event of a potentially dangerous situation, it'll buzz on the athlete's head to alert them, and it'll also alert parents and coaches through the connected mobile application, just to make everyone aware that that athlete needs to come to the sideline for a little more attention.
And it's literally a sensor, so the athlete will feel it in wherever the sensor. If it's a football player, obviously it'll be in his helmet, I assume, in wrestling as well, but it'll be somewhere around the head. It's tiny, right?
Yeah, it's a tiny little sensor, and it'll fit on any piece of head-worn athletic equipment. It needs to be worn on the head. That's a common question we get. It does need to be worn on the head to get accurate measures, but it'll be very, very obvious, very noticeable.
So, obviously the focus of the concussion discussion has been on football, but that leaves out a ton of sports where kids, and again, we're talking about middle schoolers, high schoolers, and college kids who are getting concussions. Francis, who's here, you told me you just read about how many female soccer players are getting concussions, right?
So it was interesting for me knowing about concussions back home. I've been told about it as much when it comes to soccer. It's more of the impact of the ball that hits your head. And I thought the men's soccer, with the aggression that comes onto that, would be up there in the ranks. But I mean, no taking away from girls' soccer, they are in the rankings third for high school concussion rates in the United States, just behind obviously football, boys ice hockey, and then girls soccer in there. So what I'm interested in is like the measures that have to be taken. Obviously it's great that it can fit onto a headband for girls in soccer, but how can you kind of incorporate it into perhaps men's soccer, because without that head equipment to be worn on the helmet, will it be easily enough to be put on there?
Is there a way to tackle that, or is that one of the things? By the way, you got a Kickstarter campaign going here, and one of the things you're trying to do is raise money to continue the development. But is that what about sports where you can get a concussion that don't have a piece of headgear?
Right. So, I mean, the two biggest ones that you've got there are basketball and soccer on the boys' side. On the girls' side, a lot of girls already wear some sort of a headband, whether it is soccer or basketball. And right now, for guys, soccer and basketball, what we're advocating is that they just wear a sweatband that it can be clipped onto. Yeah. That's sort of really the only gap that we have right now in terms of head-worn athletic equipment that we can work with.
So we were talking about, I mentioned the Kickstarter campaign. You guys are trying to raise $60,000 in a month. You're about a third of your way there as we talk right now. What do you need the $60,000? This is the great thing about when you go to MIT. If you have an idea and you go to a college like, I don't know, like a silly college, I don't know, like Whittier or something like that, right? No, but if you go to like Whittier or Tufts and you have a good idea, you think, oh, I got a good idea, and then you go get something to eat. When you go to MIT and you have a good idea, you apparently go to the lab and you develop that idea. So what do you guys need the money for? What good comes out of this?
So the main thing is we can get a first batch of sensors out to the field for young athletes to start using. What goes into that, in addition to the cost of the sensors themselves, is some setup costs associated with our manufacturing, where we have to pay for some tooling, some certifications, some other things like that that are fairly expensive. So essentially that's what the $60,000 will enable. It'll enable us to set up our manufacturing. It'll enable us to get that first run of sensors out to people. And then moving forward, our only cost then will be for manufacturing any additional sensors that we're shipping.
I just wanted to jump in on this just to talk about the product itself. Something that really stood out to me to how fantastic of an idea it is. I not only having played soccer but coaching it as well in the United States at a youth level. It seems like a lot of the coaches are aware of basically what a concussion is and what actually goes along with it and the danger that it poses to the child, to the youth players, etc. But also what's fascinating is, as you said, it can obviously let the parents know, because I've talked to some parents considering soccer and the problems that go along with what a concussion, and I feel that their knowledge of the issue is not as strong as what it is in a coach, because when you get your coaching badges and you're obviously you're told how dangerous a concussion can be, whereas the parents, they need to understand that the concussion on the field, it has to go along with coming off the field when they go home and the activities that they do there. So I think the fact that it lets the player themselves know, but also the fact that it reciprocates onto the side of the field and lets the parents and lets them aware of the danger that happens, I think that's fantastic.